Welcome back to another episode of the Ministry of Truth. Number one host on this show. And it's Sunday morning, waiting for football to start. Got plenty of hours to go. And we're going to have a little history lesson. We're going to have a history lesson on both Florida and Texas. And this area of Florida is really, how do I say this? Suspicious. Because of the area that got hit by the hurricane recently, Hurricane Milton, in the exact same area. Also, pretty close to the same area that Bill Gates wants to build his 15-minute cities. But before we get anything, we got to get the music flowing, blood flowing, music, set the mood. So let's get ready for some music, if I can find it.
We're not gonna never stop. Operation Genocide. The murderers will soon be identified. Time and what must be done. You got planes in the sky while you watching the ground. White lines they releasing, dropping chemicals down. Food you consuming loaded up with GMOs. More laws that take your rights away will be imposed. Online posts got you under cyber attack. Now you labeled a terrorist under the Privacy Act. Phone and internet activity, spying on that. Now everybody's finding out what it's like to be black. You think America's free? Sorry, you're wrong, dude. FDA trying to keep you from planting your own food. No convo. Game monopolized by Monsanto. No use trying to reproduce the seeds cause they won't grow. Now you gotta keep buying, the profit's enormous. Cheating people and making money off of the farmers. Experimenting with dangerous poison to harm us. Anything pure and organic, they taking it from us. Satan on a mission daily to see what he can plot up. Every 2 or 3 months, something getting bombed and shot up. Some say that the world's gone crazy and backwards. Some say it's all staged and the victims are actors. The schemes and the lies, the subliminal cruelty. The clues be usually hidden in movies. They show you what they plan to do to trick and confuse us. Hollywood is full of ruthless, perverted producers. They sit up in the offices designing the evil, negatively influencing the minds of the people. Our male role models gain false successes. Soon as they start blowing up, they put them in dresses. It's money for your manhood, companies scaring them. And now even these punk ass rappers is wearing them on the strongest. World entities replace the owners. A sports stadium is more important than the homeless. For the longest, no remorse or atonement. One of the biggest tricks is degrees and diplomas. Wars get started cause the government's greedy. Truth being overshadowed by reality TV. America been murdering for centuries easy. From diseasing the Indians all the way to Tuskegee. So now murderous gangs cover a wide range. From the immunizations that they shoot in your child's veins, to the flu shot that you got, the fake food chains, the synthetic marijuana you're smoking killing your brains. A catalog of pills contributes to the economy. The dope house in the hood ain't got nothing on the pharmacy. It's 1,500 militias mad and ornery, ready for war, weapons and guns in the armory. A chance to assassinate the president they wait for. Others stockpile and ammunition for a race war. The wicked chemists still practicing racist eugenics. Babies murdered in minutes at Planned Parenthood clinics. No money or resources reinforces the fear. Now we seeing 300,000 abortions.
There we go. Welcome back. So glad we have everyone here to watch good old Tampa. So, like I said, this is Tampa. They're going to talk about the lost city of Atlantis. All right. What was the word I'm going to say? I'm going to watch him. I may agree. I may not agree. We shall see. And YouTube, just calm the fuck down. All right. And just a side note. Everybody has to learn from fucking mistakes. I don't care if I know you. I don't care if I don't know you. I don't care if I'm related to you. You got to learn. Because what I'll do is I'll tell you advice. Whether or not you follow that, that's completely on you. So it doesn't make me no worse than anybody else. It makes me a fucking realist. I learn from mistakes. I do. That's why I don't trust people. So if you think that I'm bad because I didn't agree with Jersey, I didn't take Jersey's side. In reality, I told Jersey to stop crying about it. I did. And I told him he can feel any way he wants, and I can feel any way I want. But that being said, let's get into Florida.
Us a PDF on academia.edu that I wanted to share with you guys. A sunken harbor discovered off the coast of Tampa Bay. This is the research of John Jensen, not my own, so I can't attest to everything found within.
Not on Rumble?
However, this evidence substantiates some of the topics which are the focus of my channel, such as the Tampa Bay area being the capital seaport of Atlantis.
Okay,
So let's take a look. Tampa Offshore Sunken Harbor. A non-natural harbor, 2.2 miles offshore in the open ocean. The old shoreline is estimated to be between 6 feet and 9 feet below current ocean level.
And when you go
Based
do the
on the
Google
size
Earth
of-
over the Tampa area, there's a bunch of little islands out there, but you can see that there was actually huge landmass, and those islands were probably mountains.
Length of the Tampa Offshore Sunken Harbor as a major engineering project, a population base large enough to have ready resources to undertake the massive construction components of this size project is required. To complete other massive projects here in Florida, as well as New York, Mexico, and South Africa, around the same relative time frame, suggests a dense Atlantic Rim population density. The Tampa Harbor is located about 2.2 miles offshore in the open ocean. It rests on a high tidal shoulder besides a large land egress channel.
Oh.
Length of the main body of the harbor is something over 9,000 feet to 10,000 feet,
Oh.
with a widened harbor to the left and an additional 3,000-foot exit canal toward the open ocean. Based on harbors of similar sizes today, we can estimate the depth of the cut harbor to be 35 to 40 feet deep. The volume of material cut, transported, and disposed was roughly 45 million cubic yards, at an average cost in dollars today of about 12 per cubic yard. This project looks like the beginning of a colossal engineering project in the $538 million range. At this level of material, a minimum of technical machinery, including dredge cutters, piping, barges, and a whole range of equipment would be required. Although mega projects of this size have been accomplished in the past, using manpower alone, such as the Great Wall
What
of
up, bad
China,
guy? Hey,
nothing
man,
on
who
this
won
order has ever
yesterday?
been shown to have been done in the cutting and dredging of harbors of this size. Nothing on this order has ever been shown
I'm
to
wake
have
up.
been done
I'm already
in the cutting
awake.
and dredging of harbors of this size, while at the same time being involved with several other like projects, as demonstrated by the Boca Grande Harbor, about 70 miles south, and other similar sites. Based on casual observation alone, it is evident this harbor was not completed with manpower alone.
Yeah. That
but
looks like
with some
something they could
very
tie off their
sophisticated
ships
machinery
to.
and equipment. Ocean depth at the tidal shoulder, edge of the
FCC?
harbor,
Okay, that makes
is
sense.
estimated to be between 6 feet and 9 feet deep.
That actually makes
It could
complete
be as
sense.
much as 12 foot to 15 deep. Those depths place a date certain, based on ocean level rise, of between 7,200
Yeah, there you
and
go, see?
7,400.
So this is what Florida is right now. You can see the outline. And then before, this was actually Florida. Oops.
years.
And this is where the Tampa coastline is supposed to be. But it pushes out. But this is overhead view on Google Earth. You can see little, like, islands out there.
Before present. We think that this civilization was destroyed by a super mega cataclysm, and if so, it is entirely plausible, if not likely, that some residue artifacts in stone, pottery, and possible other unknown materials are preserved in the mud and silt at the bottom of this harbor.
And then
We
when you
intend to
think
be the
about that,
first-
why does Bill Gates want that area? Bill Gates knows. He knows there's a lot of free energy there. Now, what would happen if I don't know, a tidal wave, because you know how they pull the water away? Not that I want a tidal wave to hit Florida, but I wonder if they pulled all that water away, what we would actually see.
To find out. We are not releasing location coordinates on this site, pending our own expedition dive. If you are interested in joining the expedition to this site, please let us know. Boca Grande Harbor. Above image is a composite of satellite imagery and Google Earth of the Boca Grande Harbor and causeway. 700-foot average width, 5,200-foot length. In addition to this amazing underwater artifact, there is an existing causeway or roadway that extends from the harbor edge northeast, terminating at the second tidal shoulder of the current shoreline. As a rough estimate,
Were they running out of
this
ink when they
structure as an
fucking
engineering
typed this?
project would consist of cutting, dredging, removal, and disposal of approximately 8,100,000
Long before Columbus
cubic
landed.
yards of material. Total project cost in today's dollars of roughly $6 per cubic yard.
So they're saying that.
Total project cost in
God damn it.
today's dollars.
Where did I see it? It's streets like those of Venice in Europe. So it was trying to say the sunken portion, which they believe is Atlantis, looked like Venice, which would explain how the city sunk.
Of roughly $6 per cubic yard of material. This project had a budget of just under $50 million. The Boca Grande Harbor sits on the second tidal shoulder and appears to be in the range of 6 feet to 9 feet below current mean tide level.
Yo, the
If
whole
so,
section's 2
that
miles
means its
long.
relative build and use date had to be within a very tight window between 7,200 and 7,300 years ago. At that time, the third meltwater pulse ocean level was rising at the rate of more than 5 feet per 100 years. Since ocean
up,
rise
Batmom?
is established to be slightly
Always
more
a
than
pleasure to
5
see ya.
feet over the last 7,000 years, an additional 3 to 5 would indicate a depth of 6 to 9 feet to be roughly equivalent to 7,200 years ago. Northern
Florida was
section
bigger?
ending at the secondary tidal shoulder, near the shoreline. The entire section is just over 10,300 feet, or 2 miles. The road or causeway that extends from the harbor northeast to the shoreline is about 2 miles long, and is degraded and covered over with sand in several places.
Wonder why.
This section is more degraded closest to the harbor proper, and then retains its original shape of the section closest to the shoreline. This harbor has many features similar to the Tampa Bay sunken harbor. Both are very near or on the edge of a deep water channel that goes out through the continental shelf to the open ocean. Edges of the harbor edge or shoulder are currently estimated to be between 6 feet and 9 feet beneath mean tide ocean level. Its
Jesus
depth
Christ.
suggests it is contemporary with the Bimini Road, as well as other harbors and canals at this depth. Ocean level rise dating suggests this harbor was inundated between 7,000 and 7,100 years ago. North Key Largo. This site is a series of inlet canals that are grown over and silted in,
Interesting.
eroding back into the landscape. The center canal is one of the largest, if older, ones found to date. It is about
I wonder if you go
2,700
digging there if you can
feet
find
long
anything.
to the end of the silted-in paddlehead. The original width is about 350 feet, and the newer section is about 170 feet wide. The older section of the canal is about 445 feet wide, and the newer section is about 220 feet wide. The North Canal is about 85 feet wide. The curved S sections connecting the canals are completely silted in and grown over. To the right, an unused,
saying you'd probably
unconnected
find
cut
something.
canal goes out to open water. There is substantial berm around the open water cut canal, indicating it was built when the tidal shift was above water. Of significance is the moat canal surrounding the complex. All indications are that this
So-
complex
Is this supposed to be a river? the blue portions. It looks like a river. But then you look again. Look at the blue doors, the blue bricks. Why is it everything is always tied to like a blue roof, blue bricks, where they almost completely safe? Is that why they flooded it?
Is one of the older shore-based complex systems found to date. It certainly may not date to 7,000 years before present, but it is much older than the 200-odd years our modern culture has been settling the South Florida Keys. It may very well post-date the offshore harbors.
8,000
Firm
years
soil
ago.
samples need to be taken here for a relatively accurate C14 dating sample.
Yeah, but the carbon
This
dating only
complex
goes back
appears to
so
have two
far.
building and use periods.
You never really
One
know
that
how
is
old it
less
really is.
structured and has the appearance of being built on top of the old system. The original berm on this center canal includes the large rectangle paddle head. The second berm seems to have been cut out of the silted over section. It is not possible in this preview to do justice to the many features of this complex, and much fieldwork is required to make serious statements of potential purpose and function. I will agree this complex does not appear to support a 5-foot rise in ocean level, but it certainly could and would support a 1-foot plus raise, putting the date of this complex somewhere between 4,500 and 5,800 years ago. In any case, it is not modern, meaning it was not built in the last 200 or so
Well,
years
no
of
shit.
Florida expansion. There are many other shore-based complexes in the Keys that show at least a 3-tiered tidal shoulder that is about 2 feet deep.
Yeah, the Florida, this guy, he does Florida history. I don't know why he got Texas, but we're going to watch Texas history as well. A lot of the shit he says, I actually agree with. And Florida's got a lot more history that I knew about that I didn't think everyone else knew about, such as early European settlers long before it was discovered by Columbus and even Vespucci. They have where they've had white people there long before any Native Americans, but they also have a native tribe called the Moors. Now, true Moors, they know the history of the United States because they're taught that. Those people that want to say they're a Moor just to be like a sovereign citizen, they're not Moors. All right? They pretend to be Moors, and they say Moors are from Morocco. Nah. And you can always tell they've got big beards. Most of the time, they're like reddish. So if you see a black guy with a reddish beard, he's more than likely a Moor. But now we're going to switch from Florida and the city of Atlantis to the history of the state of Texas. Now, Zippity would love to see this one, but this is way too early. She has to take her Metamucil and all those old people capsules. So we're going to continue.
To Florida, the original Lone Star Republic. Due to this little-known connection between America's two most freedom-loving territories, I thought it appropriate that we uncover the hidden history of modern-day Texas and its native peoples. In the fall of 2023, myself and my hippy-dippy Old World Florida expedition team geared up for a road trip to Texas in order to witness a total annular eclipse
You went
at
all the way
an
to Texas,
astrological conference, of which I was also a guest speaker. Along the way, we visited some of that state's most significant and mysterious ancient sites. Join us as we camp out at Enchanted Rock, Texas's most legendary geological feature, and later travel to Rockwall, which would have to be its most controversial. Despite appearing like an obviously man-made wall, complete with quartz crystal mortar, the so-called experts to this day maintain that the buried stones of Rockwall, Texas, are nothing more than a natural formation, an assertion which we and the original discoverers of the wall happen to disagree with. As you all know, Texas is a big state, full of big things. So get ready for some giant trees and tales
Yeah,
of
those
giant
trees.
cannibals. This documentary will
they
cover
in
everything about Texas
the old
that
look at
the
that.
ominous they
Let's go
do
back
not
to
want for some giant
Native American
trees
that has
and
a
tales of
swastika.
giant cannibals. This documentary will cover everything about Texas.
Native American with a swastika. Ooh, then that's the actual way that the Germans put it. Texas Indians are Nazis.
That the ominous they do not want you to know. Things like black Native Americans,
Oh,
astrologically arranged burial mounds, human sacrifice, elongated skulls, out-of-place architecture, so-called ancient aliens, and
well,
much,
fuck!
much
I need
more.
to go to Rockwall.
As our nation's southern border is continually disrespected, I believe it is now more than ever that we must recognize the ancient value of the lands on which we today dwell and by default are obligated to defend. This video is lengthy and information dense,
God, I want to go.
so make sure
explore
to
that area.
kick back, spark up, and pour
I could
yourself
spend a whole month
a
out
little
there.
liquid sunshine while you're at it. The views expressed in this video do not necessarily reflect my own. Now enjoy.
Especially places like that.
Welcome to Florida, baby.
Oh, hey, Florida. Crescent moon, just like the Gulf of Mexico. Bro, that's almost like Casey Anthony's sex tape. Casey Anthony has a sex tape? Interesting.
Introducing Dr. Narco Longo.
That dude's a doctor?
In 1513, Spanish conquistador Ponce de Leon landed near Melbourne, Florida, beginning the European settlement of the United States. Not many people are aware that the name La Florida was coined by De Leon and applied not only to the Florida Peninsula,
That's not true.
but all of North America, which he had claimed for the Spanish crown. The Europeans had theretofore been restricted to the Caribbean islands
Oh, wow.
and small portions of South and Central America. Texas, like all of the United States, quite literally started as a piece of Florida. The first European to see Texas, we are told, was Alonso Alvarez de Pineda, who led an expedition in 1520. While searching for a passage between the Gulf of Mexico and Asia, Alvarez de Pineda likely created
You
the
went the wrong
first
way,
known
bro.
map of the northern Gulf Coast. This map is the earliest recorded document in Texas history. Between 1528 and 1535, 4 survivors of the
Interesting.
Narvaez expedition, including Alvar Nunez,
He knows he didn't land in
Cabeza
Haiti,
de
and they don't
Vaca, and
necessarily look
Estebanico,
like they're Spanish
spent
descent.
6.5 years in Texas as slaves and traders among various native groups. Cabeza de Vaca is said to be the first European to have explored the interior of Texas. Around 1542, the Hernando de Soto expedition entered Texas from the east when that territory still fell under the name of La Florida. It would not be for another 140 years that Texas would see any significant European activity. The French settled parts of East Texas in
You
the
can still see Indian
1680s
tribes up on there too.
after nobleman Rene Robert Cavalier
See,
claimed
Virginia's
the
not even
entire
the
Mississippi River Valley for France.
American name.
But when the Spanish moved to recapture the coast of Texas in 1689, they found the main French colony at Matagorda Bay, massacred
What year is
by
it?
the notorious native Karankawa, a tribe of cannibals who spared only a handful of children. The turn of the 18th century saw gradual settlement and native missionary work by the Spanish, with the construction of some very notable
That doesn't
buildings
look like a
being
hut.
dated to this era. France
But
would
they were
not
only,
abandon its
you know,
claims
trees
to
and huts
Texas
and shit.
until November 3rd,
Yo,
1762.
what the fuck is that doing there? The fucking Templars. Look at this shit. They even circled it for you. Fucking Knight Templars. What the fuck are they doing there?
When it ceded all of its territory west of the Mississippi River to Spain in the Treaty of Fontainebleau. The late 1700s saw the Comanche
Is that a
ally
unicorn?
with the Spanish, who together drove most of the other tribes in Texas to near extinction and Christianization. During the American Revolution, Texas and the Tejanos helped the Americans in British West Florida. Unlike East Florida, Texas supported U.S. independence by also fighting in New Orleans and other campaigns in the Gulf of Mexico. In
I hope so, 'cause they're
1799,
really close.
Spain gave Louisiana back to France in exchange for the promise of a throne in central Italy. Although an agreement was signed on October 1st, 1800, it did not go into effect until 1802. The following year, Napoleon sold Louisiana to the United States. The original agreement between Spain and France had not explicitly specified the borders of Louisiana, and the descriptions in the documents were ambiguous and contradictory. The United States insisted that its purchase also included most of West Florida and all of Texas. The disagreement would continue until the signing of the 1819 Adams-Onis Treaty, at which point Spain gave Florida to the United States in return
where did we
for
get Oregon?
undisputed control of Texas.
England.
However, in 1821, Texas would become a part of the newly independent nation of Mexico, thus ending the period of Spanish Texas. 11 years earlier, in 1810, Anglo settlers living in West Florida
White
rebelled
people.
against their Spanish rulers. When the rebels raised a small force to capture the Spanish fort at Baton Rouge, Melissa Johnson, the wife of one of the soldiers, made a flag for them to carry. With a 5-pointed white star on a blue background,
Right.
it was soon dubbed the Lone Star Flag. The
No
independent
fucking
but
way.
short-lived nation of West
That's how they became the Lone Star State? Holy shit. Because of a flag.
Florida became known as the original Lone Star Republic. Between 1835 and 36, Texas rose in revolt
fucking nuts.
against Mexico, fighting under West Florida's Lone Star flag and voluntarily submitting to U.S. annexation
Nice.
in 1845. The single star motif would go on to be adopted by the state flags of Arizona, California, Nevada,
What the
Utah.
fuck?
and Minnesota. The 5-pointed star had emerged as a symbol of enlightenment and defiance against tyranny,
Really?
and would remain a motif for the flag of the Texas Republic. The 5 points of the star represent fortitude, loyalty, righteousness, prudence, and broad-mindedness. According to the Texas State Historical Association, the word Texas had wide usage among the Indians of East Texas, even before the coming of the Spanish,
So, what does
whose
it mean?
various transcriptions and interpretations gave rise to many theories about the meaning. The usual meaning was friends, although the Hassanais applied the word to many groups, including Cadouin, to mean allies. The
Really?
Hasanais probably did not apply the name to themselves as a local group name. They did use the term, however, as a form of greeting, as in, hello, friend. How and when the name Texas first reached the Spanish is uncertain.
Texas, guys, Texas.
But the notion of a great kingdom of Texas had spread in New Spain before the expedition of Alonso de Leon and
You know, I often
Damian
tell my
Massenet.
daughter and my wife this. You know, if Jesus being crucified on the cross, caused him to die, why is Jesus on a cross on Catholic crosses? To me, that's like saying, hey, look what we did. We feel bad for it. But this is how we killed him. And this is our symbol for Jesus Christ because we wanted to kill you.
In 1689, Massenet reported meeting Indians who proclaimed
And
themselves.
funny story. My oldest took shrooms for the first time yesterday. And she's like, I was speaking to a goddess. So I was like, so you just admitted there's more than one God. Took Catholicism and destroyed it.
Thecas, or friends as he understood it. And on meeting the chief of the Nabadaches, one of the Hasanai tribes, mistakenly referred to him as the governor of a great kingdom of the Texas. Whatever the Spanish denotations of the name Texas, the state motto, friendship, carries the original meaning of the word
That's
as
crazy.
used by the Hasanai and their allied tribes.
Oh, that's an
And the
American
name
flag.
of the state, apparently, was derived from the same source. Other putative meanings, such as land of flowers, paradise,
What the fuck are you doing,
and
dude?
tiled roofs, from the thatched roofs of the East Texas tribes, have less evidence from contemporary accounts to support them. The potential meaning of land of flowers for the word Texas would count as a perplexing link to Florida, a Spanish word of the same meaning.
Florida means flowers.
On October 14th, 2023, an annular solar eclipse occurred around the world, with its path of totality passing directly through the state of Texas. Coinciding with this great celestial event was an astrological conference hosted by Robert Phoenix in Kerrville, Texas. Robert had invited me to speak at the event, so my girlfriend, Kat, and I
The big
headed
ass
off to
cat.
Texas in my van. Along the way, we stopped at some of Florida's unique historic gems, like War Mineral Springs in Northport, which thousands of
Fountain of
people
Youth.
have moved to from Eastern Europe, believing it to be the original Fountain of Youth, which Spanish conquistador Ponce de Leon sought after landing nearby in 1521. Then on to Newport Richey,
I know a little bit
Florida,
about some random
where I
history.
revisited an ancient Indian sacrificial altar with 2 petroglyphs publicly displayed on the deck of a sports bar. We then met up with my good friend Jeffrey, who lives in
Oh,
the
Jeff.
exact vicinity of the Georgia border, which Florida's 1936 Republican candidate for governor, E. Calloway, proclaimed to be the original Garden of Eden and launching point for Noah's Ark, as described in the book of Genesis. The primary evidences for his theories are the climate and fertility of Florida, the presence of Earth's...
Bro, you know you farted real loud when you mute your mic. You fart, and then it says, audio is muted. Like, no shit, dude. It's a pretty loud fart, I guess.
only equal four-headed river system, and the endemicity of Gopherwood to that exact same four-headed river system. An exhaustive case for this assertion is presented in other videos of mine. After
It's
meeting
crazy
up
to
with
watch all
Jeffrey
this and see that a lot of this history comes from Southeast United States. And for some reason, that's the place I spent most of my life and don't plan on moving. At one point, I wanted to move to Vermont, but then I realized, they're pretty fucking liberal and they're expensive.
departing from the Garden of Eden, we made our way around the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, which can be considered the true Fertile Crescent. We then passed through Louisiana, visiting some of America's largest and oldest trees. Our time in New Orleans can be viewed in my Cities of the Dead video, in which we toured the Big Easy's most famous
Bro, that
cemetery
would be funny.
and its most
Now I got
ancient,
something to work for.
with the ex-singer of Black Flag. We finally crossed into Texas and met up with my friend and fellow researcher, Dylan, in Houston. Being our first venture into the state, we ought to give a description of the native people whose territory present-day Houston
Not gonna lie, I
once
do
fell
like
under.
Texas, though.
This portion of Texas was once inhabited by a race of cannibals known as the Atacapa and Acokisa.
Bless you.
The meaning of Acokisa is not known for certain, but Atacapa is either a native Choctaw or Mobilian term, meaning
eaters of human flesh.
What the fuck?
for their everyday diet, the Atacapans largely ate whatever animals
Why is there
were
one black
available
kid?
to them. But shellfish, alligator, duck, and turtle would have been staples.
All really good things.
They were
to eat.
also known to spear flounder by night, using torches to see. They used oil from alligators as a medicine and insect repellent.
I did not know
The
that.
Atacapa are said to have been shorter, dark-skinned, and stout. In fact, their depictions often give the impression of an Ethiopian or Negroid racial type.
My first question, Chief, is your name
Oh, Michael Amos.
and how old are you?
Dude, it says was a black man. What the fuck?
67.
And what's your occupation?
I'm retired.
And what did you do prior to that?
I was in the military, retired military.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And what's your tribal membership then?
Oh, we got about 1,500 tribal members.
And what's your position in the tribe?
I'm the principal chief of the tribe. We cover southwest Louisiana and southeast Texas.
Okay.
I don't know.
So-
Kind of the tribal chief of mine.
What is the name
Passed down from my god
of your
grandfather.
tribe in their native language?
Ishak, I-S-H-A-K, Ishak. I know he came about, the slur word was Atacapa, okay?
Okay.
Was given by the Choctaw, and then when the Spanish and the French came over, they kept the word up, Atacapa. But our real name was really Ishak, you know.
That
So
sounds
that would be the name from the
Arabic.
beginning of time, you know, with the tribe. Yes.
Their clothing included breechcloths and buffalo hides. They did not practice polygamy or incest.
good.
Unlike other coastal tribes, the Atacapans and Acokisa made great use of captured horses. The tribes predominantly lived in huts during the winter and chickees during the summer, using furs for warmth. The homes of chiefs and medicine men were erected on earthwork mounds made by several previous cultures, such as the Mississippians. William Byrd Powell, a medical doctor and physiologist, regarded the Atacapan as cannibals. He noted that they traditionally flattened their skulls frontally and not occipitally, a practice opposite to that of neighboring tribes, such as the Natchez Nation. The following comes to us from French historian Antoine Simon Lepage Dupratz, who lived in Louisiana
How many
from
names did they have?
1718
Fuck.
to 1734. Quote, along the west coast, not far from the sea,
Dude, my cats are being stupid.
inhabit the nation called Atacapans, that is, man-eaters, being so called by the other nations on account of their detestable custom of eating their enemies, or such as they believe to be their enemies." End quote. The next excerpt comes to us from The Atakapan Indians by Joseph T. Butler. Quote, "When during battle the Atakapa warriors either captured or killed a particularly brave enemy, certain parts of the enemy's flesh were cut off, dried, and smoked. This smoked flesh was taken
Really?
back to the village, where a
Like
ceremony
jerky.
ensued. All the pregnant women were lined up, and the chief would place a morsel of this smoked flesh in each one's mouth. While placing this flesh in their mouths, the chief would express his hope and sentiment that the unborn child would acquire the particular traits of the enemy, such as his valor, strength, or speed."
Oh,
End
wow.
quote. We continue from Duprat's. Quote,
Sucked to be a POW
"Since
if
the
that was
French
true.
have gone among them, they have raised in them so great a horror of that abominable practice of devouring creatures of their own species, that they have promised to leave it off, and, accordingly, for a long time past, we
Wow.
have heard of no such barbarity among them." End quote. When Louis Leclerc Milfort, a French traveler who spent 20 years living among the Muskogee Indians, came upon a band of Atakapa in 1781, he reported that they had elected a Jesuit missionary as their chief,
Of
and
course.
despite continuing to cook Spanish captives alive, no longer ate them. He would also emphasize the hospitality that the tribe had shown him. According to the Texas State Historical Association, the Akokisa were Atakapan-speaking Indians who lived in extreme southeastern Texas, between the Trinity and Sabine rivers. Spanish conquistador Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca found himself in Akokisa territory in the early 16th century, after being shipwrecked near Galveston Bay, as
But
did
look how he's
Frenchman
dressed like the natives.
Francois Simars de Belleisle in the early 18th century. Much of what we know about the Akokisa comes to us from de Belleisle, who lived among them for about 2 years, before being rescued by a neighboring tribe. De Belleisle gave the following first-hand account of the Akokisa. Quote, "His face has tattoos, with a black line that goes down the front to the end of his nose, and another from the lower lip to the end of the chin. Another small one next to each eye, and, on each cheek, a small black spot. Like the nose, the lips also are blackened, and the arms are painted with other markings. The women's breasts are painted with numerous concentric circles
Oh.
around the nipples.
Okay.
One,
That's not a nipple.
2, or 3 black lines are tattooed on their faces, beginning on
They
the
still exist
forehead
today, don't
and
they?
running across the nostrils, down the chin." End quote. Atakapa oral history says that they originated from the sea, not the Bering Strait, and that an ancestral prophet laid out their original rules of conduct.
Where did your tribe, what is the origin of your tribe? How did your tribe begin? Where did it start from?
Well, there's a lot of saying. Some say we came from the sea. We don't really know, but the Ishak been here for like 4,000 years, BC. So we don't really know. There's a lot of write-ups about Egypt. It's about Egypt and stuff like that.
Egypt's in
During
the
the
Grand
Ice
Canyon.
Age. In the Ice Age. But there's nothing really solid that I know of that where it actually originated from, except here.
The Akokisa diet probably consisted of fish, oysters, deer, bison, bear,
Bro.
a special type of superfine maize or corn,
Yeah, I'm gonna say
while
just
tubers of the greenbrier
maize.
vine provided meal for baking and cooking. Ritualistic black drink made from native holly was used for purifications in certain ceremonies. When a wild animal was slain, the Akokisas would let no piece go to waste.
Good.
It seems this attitude was applied not only to wild animals,
I'm not
but
gonna
their
lie
enemies
though,
at arms.
their meat sources. Woohoo! I need to go join this tribe just for a month back in this time. You think they would recognize me as not being a native? I think they would.
As well. We
They
return
would
to the
accept me,
words
though.
of De Belil. Quote, "That morning they killed 15 or 16 buffaloes. We ate as much as we wanted, because we had not eaten for 2 days. When this expedition was finished, we saw smoke at a distance of about 1.5 leagues. One of them asked me what this was. I told him that it was a fire on the prairie. He asked me if there were people. I answered him that someone ought to be there, and that no deer had lighted the fire.
Right.
They said that 8 of their band would go there to kill the people, and that they were their enemies. They
Where
left
were
to go
they?
towards this smoke, where they found 10 or 12 toyals, that is, the name of their enemies. Nevertheless, they were able to kill but one, who was up in a tree to knock walnuts down. With their arrows, they made him come down much more quickly than he had climbed up. When this man was dead, they loaded him on their horses and brought him to the place where we had stayed to wait for them. When they returned, they threw this Indian on the prairie. One of them cut his head off, and another one cut the arms off,
Oh.
while they skinned him at the same time. Several of them ate the
Did they
yellow
eat-
fat, which was still raw, and finally, they devoured him completely." End quote. The Akokisa war party was
Right.
amused by
I'm gonna go back and
Gabriel's
change.
refusal
Most of their meat choices are good. That one, no.
to take part in the cannibalistic rites. So under the pretext of serving him bison or deer meat, they secretly fed him human flesh. When De Belil discovered this trick, it, quote, made him vomit until he threw up blood. We must note that the Akokisa did not resort to cannibalism out of sheer hunger, for as we have just read, these Indians had already slaughtered over 12 bison. Despite their anthropophagous tendencies, the Akokisa did observe somewhat of a moral code, consuming only their enemies and never their own kind. When stranded Spaniard Cabeza de Vaca passed through Akokisa territory, he found the natives there to be horrified after learning a party of stranded Spaniards had consumed each other in starvation.
Look at the Spaniards. They're white in that drawing.
The next morning, we would arrive at Kerrville just in time for my introduction at Robert Phoenix's conference. That afternoon, Robert recommended we visit a nearby attraction in Ingram known as Stonehenge 2. Not knowing anything more than that, we headed down the road to Texas's very own Stonehenge. The story goes that in 1989, Kerr County native Doug Hill finished work on the back patio on his Hunt, Texas property and was left with one extra limestone slab. As a so-called joke, he offered it to his good friend and neighbor, Al Shepard, who then accepted it and stood the slab upright
So
in the middle of
man-made.
his pasture. Shepard and Hill liked the look of the monolith and built an arch around it. The 13-foot arch reminded them of Stonehenge in England.
Nah, fuck that.
Soon a vision formed, and Shepard contracted Hill to build their very own Stonehenge 2. The original Stonehenge in Wiltshire, England, was allegedly erected around 2500 BC, and is believed to have been functional as an important site for religious or astrological ceremonies. Shepherd and
aliens.
Hill's project took about 9 months to complete. Hill fabricated the stones from steel, metal,
And it's not real.
and plaster, and anchored each with cement.
The fuck out of here.
Stonehenge, too, is 90% as wide and 60% as tall as the original. Although most of the megaliths are artificial, 2 of the central stones are the authentic limestone slabs. It is difficult to ascertain the origin of these slabs, but despite their lack of history, local folklore attributes a spiritual significance to them. Later,
What is limestone?
after visiting Easter Island, off the coast of
Limestone's
Chile,
supposed to have like
Shepherd
this great hold memory a lot better than most minerals and ore. Don't know why. A lot of places that sit on limestone are also supposedly haunted. Like I said, it absorbs everything.
was inspired to add 2 13-foot-tall Maui head statues to the collection. Although the original Maui were created by a people off the Pacific coast of South America, there is actually a little-known connection between Easter Island and the Lone Star State. For starters, both Easter Island and La Florida, the
What's up,
original
Junie?
Spanish name for all of the North American mainland, including Texas, get their names from the fact that they were discovered during Easter celebrations. Then we have the Seminole Indians and Black Seminoles, who made great migrations across Texas, for whom places like the Seminole Canyon is named. Believe it or not, the exact style of hats depicted on the Maui stones of Easter Island were worn by the native Seminoles
how old are those
of
caves?
the United States.
Out of curiosity.
The Seminole Indians of Florida have been the focus of a couple videos of mine, but let us now learn about the Seminole and Black Seminole history of Texas.
I know you've heard stories of African enslavement in the Americas, its cruelties,
Right.
the harshness of it.
Uh-huh.
But I'd like to tell you another story.
Oh.
The story of families who fought not to gain their freedoms, but to maintain their freedoms in the United States of North America. The Seminoles.
Tonight is traditional dancing, Seminole styles. And
It's funny that he said the United States of North America. You mean there was other United States of South America? But it brings it back to that Chris Rock movie. We need to be president. Of what? America. Which America? North America.
it's true to Seminole culture and heritage, dancing that you will be seeing here, and I actually can participate in if you wish.
My favorite definition of history is the story written by the winners. It's a pack of lies written by the winners.
What have I been saying? That guy said it. Maybe we should believe him because he's got darker skin. History, like he said, like I say, is written by the winners. It's bullshit.
I want to tell you another story about families who fought not to gain their freedom, but rather to maintain their freedom in the United States of North America. This is another American African story, but unlike any you've heard before.
We have to look beyond just the rest of the United States. We have to look at the Americas. Because when the Africans arrived, there was somebody here. Indigenous people were incorporated into the religions of the Africans who arrived.
So they weren't
Indians knew
slaves.
early arriving Africans as merchants, medicine men, and magicians, not slaves. The earliest meetings are recorded as occurring around 1500 BC.
What we call Istalusti or black people, the majority of them did migrate with what we now consider called the Oklahoma Seminoles. As the Oklahoma Seminoles are today, we are still the only Indian tribe in the United States that still has black people, that has no Indian blood at all in them, that are still citizens of the tribe.
Bloodlines followed the mother, so children born to an Indian mother were called Indian, no matter the physical attributes.
Being
That's how they
Seminoles,
do
the
it.
majority did come to the Indian Territory as prisoners of war.
After 3 wars with the U.S. and Florida, some Seminoles capitulated to Indian Territory, mostly on the advice of their black counselors and advisors, rather than attempt to endure the designed oppressions imposed on them because of their rebelliousness. Thousands of Seminoles escaped Indian Territory, running north to Kansas, west into the desert lands and other Indian nations there, and south into Mexico. Those in Mexico became a military colony protecting Mexico's northern border along the Rio Bravo. The Mexicans called their black Indian mercenaries Muskoka.
You know what? Lart? I didn't even think about that. But that's pretty realistic to what you just said.
The first Muskoka Seminole Indian scouts enrolled at Fort Duncan on promises of regular army pay and land to call their home. Living in squalor 4 years later,
you're Cherokee?
Land, they were challenged by the law when they wouldn't tolerate the insults from the white populace they were protecting. In 1874,
part Cherokee.
Muskoka Private Adam Payne won the Congressional Medal of Honor in battle at Paladuro Canyon in North Texas. In 1875, Muskoka's John Ward, Isaac Payne, and Pompey Factor won Congressional Medals of Honor at Seminole Canyon in a battle with 70 Comanche they had trailed for weeks. From the time of their arrival in Mexico and Texas, these unheralded Muskoka warriors fought and defeated Napoleon's French army, invading Comanche, Lipan Apache, and Texas outlaws, while never losing a man in battle.
Why? Scouts are important. Real scouts. Not Cav Scouts. Cav Scouts are gay.
When we were in Florida, we were black Seminoles. When we went to Oklahoma, we were still black
His
Seminoles.
nickname is Duh.
When we left Oklahoma and went to Mexico, we were still black Seminoles.
What is African American include? There are many varieties of African Americans and many people that don't fit into one particular category.
Within the history of the American native is found the missing link in black history and genealogy. Seminoles, a people omitted from the annals of American history curricula. Muskoka, an independent mercenary force that policed the American West and northern Mexico.
Where did the Muskogee come from?
There's a good chance you've never heard
That's
of the
very
Seminole
true, Lart.
Indian
And brother,
Scouts who
some of the weird things is, like, I know my parents didn't pass shit down to me. Everything that I know about my culture, I had to learn. Whether through books or just talking to the other people around me. And I think that's what makes people smarter, not smarter, but wisdom.
protected the border and the earliest Texan settlers a century and a half ago. Fortunately, we have with us a
Everybody has
man
a
who has
different
made
story.
it
It's easy
his
to change
job
history.
to remember.
Yeah.
I'm honored to welcome Leroy Young, a direct descendant of a Seminole Indian scout who were real military heroes, although unsung heroes. And it's a difficult story, but one worth knowing because of the important role they played in settling Texas. Lee, welcome. Can you start by
It's like a
telling us
fucking-
who the
what's his
scouts
name?
were and the role they played?
Sam Elliott beard or
The
mustache.
Scouts played a role in assisting the government to
True story. What we learned from the Native Americans, as far as military wise, the Native Americans typically attacked at dawn because you can't see them coming. And the military, we still use that, especially when you're out in a field exercise. I know when I was in Korea, it's called stand to, and we literally had to go out on the perimeter and watch. I mean, whether or not any Koreans would have showed up is a different story. But we didn't have real ammo, so it didn't matter at that point. But still, it's funny what we learned from the Native Americans that we still use today.
make the border area or Texas, the areas that the settlers wanted to settle into. The Scouts played a vital role in making those areas safe for the settlers to move into. And so the Scouts served as scouts for the cavalry, or there for the Army, from around 1870 to 1914. And during this period of time, the Scouts served the companies that they worked with there in the military. They became to be known as very honorable and outstanding warriors and fighters, and 4 of the Scouts received the Congressional Medal of Honor.
That's awesome.
And one of those 4 was your great-grandfather, is that right? Great-great-grandfather, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. And that was Sergeant John Ward. He received the Congressional Medal of Honor in 1875.
And what did he receive it for?
He received it along with 2 other Scouts.
Right.
One was named Pompey Factor, and the other was named Isaac Payne. They were on a mission, were traveling with their commander. Well, they were tracking some Comanches that had stolen some cattle or horses.
Right.
They engaged with these hostiles in battle. They became stranded from their horses, and once they got back to their horses and were attempting to ride away from this battle, well, their commander, Lieutenant John Bullish, he lost his horse. So the Scouts turned around and went back to rescue their lieutenant. They traveled back into gunfire, and as a result of that, the 3 Scouts received the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Lieutenants are like fucking babies.
The group that's gathered here are descendants,
straight out of
descendants of the Seminole Scouts, and they've come from all over the United States. They come here in September to Bracketville every year for this reunion.
My name is Augusta Pines, and I'm a descendant of the Seminole Indian Scouts here in Bracketville, Texas, and we're gathered here today for our annual celebration.
The Seminole Scout descendants are the original Seminoles that come up from Florida. They moved up through Georgia there, and they picked up runaway Negro slaves, then ended up in Oklahoma, and then from there they were run out of Oklahoma and they ended up down in a place called Nacimiento, Mexico. By late 1871, 1872, they were transferred up to Fort Clark to serve up here, and there was approximately 50 of these Scouts. 4 of them become Medal of Honor recipients.
My name is Bertha Benson. I am a descendant of the Black Seminole Indians. The Gullah language, and of course we always call it Seminole here. We were never told that it was Gullah. We never called it Gullah, but turns out it is. It was English, but it was different. And I heard it all my life that growing up, my parents, grandparents, aunts. My name is Bertha. I come from the Fay family, and I'm Black Seminole Indian descendant. Here where I'm sitting, where I sit, is this land. We've been to live here many, many years ago. It's where my ancestors been to live.
There's still people in this area here in
It was a weird
Bracketville.
story. I was in, it was a cemetery in France. American military cemetery. They got a bunch of them, not just that main one. I was looking through the gravestones because this is from World War I. I was just curious. And the weirdest fucking thing I saw a gravestone that had my last name. That was fucking crazy to see. It's just, wow. So I do have people that fought, for America a long time ago. Are we from Nova Scotia? Are we part of the Appalachia? I don't know. But I do know where we migrated from. And like I said, it was weird seeing my name. Good thing it wasn't my first name. I would have been fucking weirded out. Just weird seeing my last name on a gravestone from World War One in France.
Speaks that language, and I really wish I had took my time and learned it and listened and tried to understand that language when I was growing up. Because it's really unimportant
I gotta find
language
that picture.
that
It might
I
be on
just
one of
let
my
go.
laptops.
I think it's very
Forever ago,
important
though.
to teach the color to the next generation, because if we don't teach it, I believe it's going to die. And my family, my parents spoke it all the time. Our kids, they don't know it, and it's going to die if we don't pass it on.
Now, back to the Maui at Stonehenge, too. Al Shepard passed away in 1994, and his property stayed within the family. In 2010, the Shepard family donated Stonehenge 2 and the Maui to the HCAF in memory of Al, a long-time supporter of the organization. After funds were raised,
like I said,
the
that was a
structures
weird
were
experience.
removed to their current home on this campus in 2012. Interestingly, the current location which Stonehenge 2 was moved to falls directly within the path of totality for the 2023 annular eclipse. And, being a copy of an astrological observatory, it raises the question of whether or not this coincidence was intended by those who selected its new location. It is known for a
Fake
fact
fucking Stonehenge.
that the
Get that shit out of
prehistoric people of both Florida and Texas revered the stars in the same capacity which the ancient Egyptians, Aztecs,
Wait, is that-
and Babylonians did, designing their temple complexes and arranging their earthworks to certain constellations or celestial bodies.
Okay, now what is that? The fuck's on the other side? Oh, chairs. Okay, that could be a wall. But all that shit's new. That newer stuff, that plaster and rebar. So the only thing that really is original is that center stone. It's gay. That shit out of here.
The following day was the date of the annular eclipse. The hotel which hosted Robert Phoenix's conference was situated directly within the path of totality. So, we and the attendees gathered in an outdoor area to view it.
Well, I hope so. It was
We would
outdoors.
also find out that a team from NASA was staying in the exact same hotel as us. As the great celestial event grew near, we sat on the ground and waited. While all of you normies were wearing your NASA-approved, George Soros-funded, Elvis Grace Tyson-looking, Fauci-bought Goy goggles that they sell at gas stations, and sometimes hand out for free, my friend Dylan had a unique trick up his sleeve. Though some would argue that human eyes can be trained to safely stare into the sun, the only natural way to safely view the eclipse in ancient times would have been with the aid of certain minerals. Obsidian, for example, can be fashioned into almost any shape and ranges from opaque to translucent.
Right.
Dylan was lucky enough to have an obsidian viewing glass. Here's what the difference looked like. Now I would like to share something with you that was very unnerving.
Okay.
I have heard stories of strange phenomena accompanying an eclipse, but on this trip we would experience it ourselves. On our little trip from Florida, we brought my camper van and my buddy's camper trailer, both of which use a generator and battery. Immediately after the eclipse had ended, when we returned to the parking lot, we found both of our batteries completely drained and unresponsive.
I don't understand how it's a complete
My girlfriend's
perfect
iPhone
circle.
was also permanently destroyed
How are they
after she
perfect
pointed its camera directly at the eclipse.
Shit don't make
Many
sense.
other electronics suffered a similar fate. Luckily, my van's solar panels were still working, and my battery was able to recharge. Though it took months for the display to turn back on, it did regain full functionality.
Oh.
Jeff's camper also returned to normal, but only after a couple months. Speaking of solar panels, this is actually one of the best ways to illustrate what was happening. On a normal, sunny day, the sun is constantly emitting energy onto the Earth. During an eclipse, however, the sun is actually absorbing electricity, not emitting it. Thus, it sucks whatever is in the battery straight out through the solar panels, like some sort of a celestial vampire. When illustrated simply, free of superstition, one can see why ancient people would have timed certain ceremonies and sacrifices to coincide with solar eclipses. Finding myself amidst a large group of people, all staring together at the sun, it brought to mind a certain group of giant, sun-gazing Native Americans. The portion of the Texas Gulf Coast extending from Galveston Bay southwestwardly to Corpus Christi
Not gonna lie.
was
When it
once
comes to
inhabited
eclipses, I just use regular sunglasses. And I can still see the same shit.
by a race of abnormally tall, cannibalistic Indians known as the Karankawa. Galveston Island in early colonial times
They look like they eat
was
fish
known
and alligator,
as
though.
the Isla de Malhado, meaning Isle of Doom, and Isla Blanca, meaning White Island. The name Karankawa loosely translates to dog lovers or dog raisers, in reference to the dogs that accompanied them on hunts, swims, and recreational activities.
Good tribe.
Interestingly, this native Texan name is eerily similar to the old Irish word concavar, meaning dog lover, from where we get the name Connor. Karankawa and Concavar. Karankawa,
Irish, huh?
Concavar. We must note that the root word for canine is the same root for the word cannibal. The dogs of the Karankawa had
That's just a
straight ears
coincidence.
and fox-like snouts, and, like those of the Florida Indians, were bred to be voiceless, perhaps to aid in surprise attacks, or just general peace and quiet. The nearby Lipan Apache called the Karankawa
And that's
Nada
where I have a hard time believing that what NASA is telling us about space is real. I really don't. Like, is the moon real? I mean, it may be, but I don't think it's solid. Okay, is it the comet or the mini moon that we're supposed to be having? Because I know there's a mini moon that's right behind the moon, and it's passing through over the next 60 days.
Kun, Dadahe, or the people who walk in the water, in reference to their method of wading in the shallows to spear fish and catch turtles. However, the neighboring Tonkawa tribe called them Keles or Kilis, meaning wrestlers, due to the Karankawas' skill in hand-to-hand combat. They would also be called Yakakon Kapai, meaning barefoot or those without moccasins.
Oh, they're talking about my tribe.
We
in the
must note
Philippines.
that the Karankawa referred to themselves as Karankawa. Although they were well known for
Very
cannibalism,
true, LARP.
the U.S. government used
And
the
it kind of makes me
Karankawas
wonder:
as allies.
Are the gods starting to line up again for another reset, or what's going on? Is it purifying? I don't know, because it's at the same time all these storms are coming, but we know where the storms are coming from. It's just really fucking strange right now, especially with they had an eclipse in Easter Island the other day.
In its wars against the Comanches and Apaches
I remember
to
Hail
the
Bob.
north. The
I'm pretty sure there's
Karankawa
another one
were
after that.
ancient sun gazers, meaning they stared at the sun as it set into the sea, as did some other native groups in Texas. They, like the Indians of Florida, also smoked tobacco through their nostrils, first to the north, then to the east, west.
What's the difference? I mean, it's still connected to the airway, but through the nose?
And south. Like other southern tribes, they prepared a ritualistic black drink from native holly, but only the men participated. All Karankawa people practiced cranial deformation. They shaped the foreheads of babies, first with a piece of cloth, then a thin board, then a wadded cloth. Each of these was tied to the head with a bandage and left to stay there about 1 year. There are many who believe that certain tribes did in fact artificially shape their skulls, but only in emulation of a
Bro, if that fucking hat thing is true, I know they're fucking not shaped like that, but if that was kind of like an origin, fucking aliens, bro.
separate humanoid species altogether, one with a naturally elongated skull. The Karankawa had distinctive tattoos, notably a blue circle tattooed over each cheekbone, one horizontal blue line from the outer angle of the eye toward the ear, 3 perpendicular parallel lines on the chin from the middle of the lower lip downward, and 2 other lines extending down from under each corner of the mouth. Moreover, 16th century European explorers wrote that the Karankawa people had labrettes, or piercings of cane, on the lower lips, nose, and other parts of the body.
Oh, that's weird.
Men, women, and children alike rubbed shark's oil on their entire bodies regularly to deter mosquitoes effectively and to keep their skin soft and supple. Europeans who encountered the Karankawa were disgusted by the odor. The Karankawa had a specific way of conversing. They carefully repressed their breath while speaking. At the end of their sentences, they exhaled heavily, releasing the air they had held back during speaking. Linguist Herbert Landar, among others, has argued that the Karankawa language and people originated from the Caribs, for who the Caribbean Sea is named, and the same has been said for some Indian tribes in Florida. Their personal names were kept secret from Europeans, and they did not believe in making eye contact while conversing. A multitude of other strange and seemingly disrespectful customs existed among the Karankawas. They were known to frequently whistle, but the reasons for this are unknown. The Karankawa were noted for their skill of communicating with each other over long distances using smoke. The Karankawa could make the smoke of a small fire ascend toward the sky in many different ways, and it was as intelligible to them across long distances as their language. Their methods are unknown. For musical instruments, they had a large gourd shaker, a type of bowed or malleted instrument, and a flute. Marriage rites between Karankawas were lengthy and laborious,
Really?
with the men providing food for the family of his wife-to-be for months before approval. Families were arranged patriarchally and
So you had to be a hunter. That's when men had to survive by surviving, learning skills. Unlike today, how many males out there hunt now that are Gen Z or millennials? I know some millennials still hunt, but Gen Z, pretty sure they're not big fans of hunting
patrilineally,
or eating
in
real
contrast to
meat.
many tribes of the southeastern United States. Between the husband and wife, no signs of fondness, intimacy, or special treatment were observed. As in the case of many Florida Indians, Karankawa culture recognized 3 gender roles: male, female, and a third, taken on by some males and women. Males who took
Hafa
on
Adai.
this third role are called manangia. They generally took on female roles and activities in daily life, while also playing a special role in religious rites. According to some accounts, these hermaphrodites also acted as passive sexual partners for other males. Seeing as how this tribe had a taste for both bison and buggery, this may or may not be the origin of the phrase, "Only steers and queers come from Texas." A
We'll say it
sailor by
is.
the name of Noah Smithwick would call the Karankawa, quote, "the most savage-looking human beings I ever saw," after encountering them in 1827. Father Gaspar José de Solis, a Spanish missionary, would relate that the Karankawas were, quote, "savage, indolent, and lazy, so greedy and gluttonous that they devour meat that is parboiled, almost raw and dripping in blood," end quote. This opinion was likely due to the fact that they did not have a regular sleep schedule, but slept whenever they wished. They also ate and drank at all times of the day.
My man.
Jean-Baptiste Talon, who the Karankawas abducted and adopted at the age of 10, gave the following account in 1698, quote, "The only meals that horrified him were those the Karankawas made of human flesh, as they are all cannibals, but toward their savage enemies only. They never ate a single Frenchman that they had killed because, they said, they do not eat them." Jean-Baptiste vouches that he once went 3 days without eating because nothing presented itself during that time except some human flesh of the rival Ayenis people, whom they had killed on one of the expeditions, end quote. Even though some academics have attempted to downplay or even dismiss the cannibalism practiced by the Karankawa for what I can only assume are political or emotional reasons, even the official website for the Karankawa Indians reluctantly admits that the tribes did in fact practice cannibalism. Quote,
Now hear me out. What if they're still doing this? Customs and traditions. They don't personally come out and say, what if they're still doing shit like this? But where would they get them? Well, it is Texas. We do have 26 million people in this country that weren't here 3 years ago. Just saying that's not what's happening, but that would be funny. Not funny. Oh my God, but funny.
The Karankawas, along with most other native groups in Texas,
sense of humor,
practiced a limited form of anthropophagy, which is a fancy word for cannibalism, prior to the 1800s. The Karankawas' exo-cannibalism served to dishonor an enemy, similar to how scalping
Oh, I thought it would be
functions
for
culturally,
fear.
and as a means of absorbing a foe's power. Anthropophagy was reserved for ancient enemies, and was meant as the highest level of disrespect. As with the Akokisa and Atakapa, lack of sustenance did not drive any form of cannibalism, and the anthropophagy occurred on deceased bodies, not on a living and breathing victim. By the mid-18th century, the Karankawas anthropophagy diminished after repeated contact with Europeans." End quote. Interestingly, Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, a Spanish conquistador who lived among the Karankawa for several years in the 1530s and wrote a memoir, made no mention of cannibalism except for ritualistic consumption of deceased relatives in the form of funeral ashes, quote, presented in water for the relatives to.
Whoa! I fucking told you! Holy shit! They make a fucking, like, Kool-Aid out of their ashes. Oh, wow.
To drink. Like the Akokisa, the Karankawa people were horrified to learn European castaways had cannibalized each other out of sheer hunger. It is worth noting that even in modern times does Texas produce a disproportionate amount of cannibals. Infamous American cannibal Daniel Paul Rakowitz, who murdered his girlfriend in 1989 and made soup from her brains in New York City, had actually grown up in Rockport, Texas, well within the coastal territory of the Karankawa tribe. In 2008, 26-year-old Christopher Lee McEwen of Tyler, Texas, was arrested after calling 911 and calmly describing the murder of his girlfriend. Authorities arrived to find her ear cooking on the stovetop. In 2009, 33-year-old Audie Sanchez of San Antonio, Texas, was arrested after cannibalizing her own son, confessing to police that the devil made her do it. In 2018, 23-year-old Alexander Barter of Joaquin, Texas, was arrested in a sting operation after soliciting a victim on the dark web, whom he could consensually murder,
what
eat,
the fuck,
and do other terrible things to. In 2000,
people agree to that shit? I don't know what. Let's go back to just war. How about that?
2023, 18-year-old Caesar Olalde of Texarkana, Texas, murdered his entire family because he believed that, quote, they were cannibals and they were going to eat him. That the Karankawas were a people of extraordinary height is evidenced by the first-hand accounts of those who met them while still living.
Land of the
In
giant.
1687, 3 Spanish sailors failed to abduct a Karankawa because, as one of the kidnappers wrote, all these Indians are of great
stories
stature.
Of giants. It's in pretty much every culture, religion, mythology. Giants.
And very robust of limb. In 1720,
By giants, I mean like 9-10
French
feet tall.
Captain Jean Barringer measured the height of some Karankawas as being over 6'6". He also noted that they had a, quote, very solemn look and handsome countenance. Popular Texas historian Edward Kilman, in describing the Karankawa, wrote, 6 to 7 footers, they towered as giants, among savages of ordinary stature. Magnificent physical specimens, but facially hideous. End quote. John Jenkins, a Texas pioneer, once said about the Karankawa that, quote, They might well have had been termed giants, for they were most magnificent men in size and strength, seldom below 6 feet in height. Even the National Park Service of Texas concedes that, quote, the Karankawa were noted for being tall, between 6 and 7 feet, excellent archers, and ferocious in appearance. The remarkable height of Karankawas is also evidenced by the skeletal remains from the areas which they and their ancestors once inhabited. In fact, as in the case of Florida, skeletal remains of Titanic men have been found in every corner of the state. The following was printed in the Valley Morning Star on Monday, August 8th, 1938, in regards to giant skeletons which likely belonged to the Karankawa. Quote, in one mound in Williamson County.
Did they dig up an ancient Indian burial ground to get these? That seems pretty fucked up.
Austin archaeologist Eric F. Pell found a mass burial, probably the result of a terrific fight between tribes. The 67 skeletons he removed were those of a giant tribe, the origin of which, he said, baffles archaeologists. Most of them were 7 feet tall, and the excellent condition of their teeth indicated that they were young men. Many of the skulls had been pierced by arrowheads. The nearest known Indian type, in relation to huge stature, were the Karankawas, cannibals which inhabited the Texas coastal plains and caused trouble for pioneer settlers. End quote. The Victoria Advocate reported the following on July 17, 1932. Quote, huge skull found. Skeleton of giant. The bones of one of the skeletons found by the University of Texas crew exploring the Moorhiss Mound below Victoria showed that its processor had in life been a very large man, far above the average size. End quote. The following comes to us from the San Antonio Express in 1940. Quote, that Texas had a giant on the beach in the long ago appears probable from the large skull recently unearthed in a mound in Victoria County, believed to be the largest human skull ever found in the United States and possibly the world. Finds made through excavations in Texas are beginning to give weight to the theory that man lived in Texas 40,000 to 45,000 years ago, it is said. Feel free to pause the video and screenshot if you'd like to say
45,000 years ago.
To 45,000. That man lived in Texas 40,000 to 45,000 years ago, it is said. Feel free to pause the video and screenshot if you'd like to read the entire article.
Read it.
While some of you may think that a human skull over twice the normal size is something that simply cannot exist, the skull has in fact been confirmed to have existed by Carol Spock, the head of records for the Texas Archaeological Research Laboratory at the University of Texas. Despite being studied by dozens of people over the years, the skull is said by some to have mysteriously disappeared. However, other very large skulls are present in the collection. The giant skull can be seen in a number of authentic photographs, however.
How the fuck did it go missing?
After the conference had come to an end, we made our way north to Texas's most impressive geological feature, Enchanted Rock.
Ooh.
Enchanted Rock is a pink granite mountain located in the Llano Uplift, about 17 miles north of Fredericksburg and 24 miles south of Llano. Enchanted Rock covers roughly 640 acres and rises around 425 feet above the surrounding terrain to an elevation of 1,825 feet above sea level. It is the largest pink granite monadnock in the United States. A monadnock is an isolated rock, hill, knob, ridge, or small mountain that rises abruptly from a gently sloping or virtually level surrounding plain. In 1971,
So was there something
Enchanted Rock
really
was
big out
designated
there?
as a...
Hear me out. And since they want to make the skulls disappear, there was something really big in that area, and it fell. And the bricks landed where the bricks landed. No? Alright.
National Natural Landmark by the
Look at
National
the
Park
rocks.
Service.
Like it fell.
After hiking around and spending the night there, one can see why Enchanted Rock was rated in 2017 as the best campsite in Texas in a 50-state survey. Park activities include caving, hiking, primitive backpack camping, rock climbing, and picnicking. Archaeological evidence indicates human visitation at the rock going back at least 11,000 years. According to the book The Enchanted Rock, published in 1999 by Ira Kennedy, quote, "On the basis of archaeological evidence, human habitation at Enchanted Rock can be traced back at least 10,000 years. Paleo-Indian projectile points,
like they just
or
fell.
arrowheads, 11 to 12,000 years old, have been found in the area, upstream and downstream from the rock. The oldest authenticated projectile point found within the present-day park is a Plainview point type, dating back
Look at the rock
10,000
in
years.
the background.
With these resources, some 12,000 years ago, the first Texans became the wellspring of Plains Indian culture." End quote. Folklore of the local Tonkawa, Apache, and Comanche tribes ascribes magical and spiritual powers to the rock, hence the
Over there,
name
too.
Enchanted Rock. While attempting to hide from Anglo settlers in the area, the natives would hide on the top 2 tiers of the rock, where they were invisible from the ground below.
No shit.
The first Europeans to visit the area was probably Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca in 1536. The Tonkawa, who inhabited the area in the 16th century, believed that ghost fires flickered at the top of the dome. In particular, they heard unexplained creaking and groaning, which geologists attribute to nighttime contraction of the rock after being heated by the sun during the day. The name Enchanted Rock derives from Spanish and Anglo-Texan interpretations of such legends and related folklore. The name Crying Rock has also been given to the formation.
Why?
Legends associated with Enchanted Rock include a haunting by a Native American princess who threw herself off the rock after witnessing the slaughter of her people, and alleged sacrifices that were conducted by both Comanche and Tonkawa tribes. The rock is rumored to host at least one lost silver, gold, or iron mine.
Really?
Footprint indentations on the rock are believed to be those of a Native American
Little
chief who sacrificed his daughter, and thus is condemned to walk Enchanted Rock forever. The screams of women are heard at night, believed to be those of a white woman who took refuge on Enchanted Rock after escaping a kidnapping by Native Americans. Spanish soldier Don Jesus Navarro is said to have rescued a native princess known as Rosa, daughter of Chief Tehuan, after her kidnap by Comanches, who intended to sacrifice her on the rock. Walking around the rock, one cannot help but notice shapes and formations which
I wonder
do
what
not
it
seem
feels
to be
like
the
to be on that
result
rock.
of natural erosion. Let me know in the comments what you think some of these formations could have been caused by.
Like, is there like a energy, a different type of energy, different aura? Because when I did that, the Citadel in France, there was just a feeling in those inside the fortress. Kind of like to camp out there just to see. Nobody's gonna mention those lines perfectly cut, right? Concrete. Oh, that's not a cave, but I'd like to walk in there. Holy shit. I bet you that was like a little, like living area. Not living, like where you could sleep from storms, since they did go up there for sacrifices and shit. Look at the cuts. Those are blocks. Go back to the right to that other mountain. No, not that one. Turn right. Turn right, asshole. Go faster. Keep going. Almost there. Go over there. I don't think you went over there. Something fell, guys. Something fell. Erosion my hand. Maybe I'm just seeing it differently. To me, it looks like something fell, a big structure.
Bring it on down to my house, honey. I need your company. Well, the tomcat sitting on the railroad track hollered at the mama cat. She answered back. Bring it on down to my house, honey. There ain't
Funny
nobody
if this
home
would
but
be
me.
like the
Cat,
date.
she answered.
See the V on the rock? What is this from year 5?
Tomcat sitting on the railroad track hollered at the mama cat. She answered back. Bring it on down to my house, honey. There ain't nobody home but me.
Hey, bring it on down to my house, honey. Ain't nobody home but me. Bring it on down to my house, baby. I
Don't
need your
twist that, makes
company. The big dog jumped and he run around the ring. Little dog jumped and he couldn't do a thing.
I don't think y'all can tell me otherwise
House,
anymore.
honey, ain't nobody home but me.
Okay, that crack's natural. Not that.
nobody home but me.
At least he's doing the camera like I would. Minus that one thing he didn't go to.
Break it, you can hang it on the wall. Throw it out the window, I'll catch it before it falls. Bring it on down to my house.
Filler.
There ain't nobody home but me.
Filler.
Well, bring it on down to my house, honey. Ain't nobody home but me.
I wonder where they let you
Bring
camp
it
this
on
place.
down to my house, honey. I need your company. Say, old man, can you play a fiddle?
Oh, my granny's old Keith can play a little.
Bring it on down to my house, honey. Ain't nobody home but me.
I don't know how to explain that one, guys. Yeah. That's interesting. Is this it? No, it's not red enough.
Bring it on down to my house, honey. There ain't nobody home but me. Bring it on down to my house, honey. I need your company.
Looks like a tree trunk.
Well, that's my gal. She's the one that did it.
Petrified tree trunk.
She just couldn't quit. Bring it on down to my house, honey.
That kind of looks like an eagle, but I don't know. I'm just weird shit right there. But that one might have been a petrified tree trunk. Not that one. That's fucking.
I got the gambling blues, polka dot blues.
Again, another one. Or the bottom of the pillar where the rocks fell.
From there, we headed north to the town of Rockwall, just outside of
Mini
Dallas,
Starford. They did that on
located
purpose.
along Texas's infamous State Highway 66. Rockwall is named for the state's most mysterious archaeological discovery to date. A vast network of prehistoric walls, made from what seemed to be large uniform stone blocks buried under many feet of earth. Despite these stones being glued together with a mortar containing quartz and iron, among other phenomena,
Quartz. Free energy. Very good conductor.
mainstream geologists, archaeologists, and historians insist that Rockwall is a so-called natural formation. This assertion has been fiercely debated
Natural my ass.
by some academics and a large community of independent truthers who insist the reality of
Yeah,
this
that looks
prehistoric
natural.
masonry
I could
is
get it.
being covered
I can
up
see that.
or swept under the rug. The story goes that in 1852, Benjamin Boydston, Terry Wade, and William Clay Stevenson discovered the strange rock wall formation during the excavation process of building a water well on Mr. Wade's property. In February of 1925, archaeologist Count Byron de Prorock examined exposed sections of the walls and proposed that they were, indeed, constructed by a prehistoric race. Stuart McGregor's article describing this idea
Prehistoric
was
race
published
building
in the
walls?
Dallas Morning News on February 22, 1925. The Austin American Statesman reported the following on the 12th of March, 1925. Quote, "Excavations which may disclose the origin of the Mystery Wall at Rockwall shortly will be begun under the direction of 2 University of Texas faculty members. Whether some race of prehistoric men
This is
or
a
the forces
very
of nature
recent
are
documentary
responsible
stuff.
for the peculiar formation for which Rockwall County was named, they will have to determine. Dr. James E. Pierce, Professor of Anthropology, and Dr. I. T. Patton, Associate Geologist in the Bureau of Economic Geology, will be in charge of the digging operations.
Well, tell them to hurry up.
Their work, according to President W.M. Splon, will be done under a contract with Colonel Frank F. Holland, a Dallas publisher who is financing the scheme. Dr. Pierce has made a life study of the phenomenon, Splon said. He has long waited to undertake an exhaustive scientific study of the wall. Speculation as to the nature of the rock wall strata has long been rife among geologists
Motherfucker said scheme.
And experts in allied fields. Anthropologists became interested, moved by the consideration that the wall, if man-made, possibly was built by some early Texas race. North Texas first took notice of the formation when one Count Prokhov, or Prorov, a wealthy Russian anthropologist, known for having unearthed the site of ancient Carthage in North Africa, declared he thought the wall was of human origin. Folks in the little town of Rockwall, 30 miles northeast of Dallas, began to talk. The village and the surrounding country became excited at the prospect of startling revelations, and Dallas citizens raised a fund to help pay for the excavations. The rock wall, according to Dr. Pierce, extends for more than 4 miles under the town of Rockwell, seat of the county of the same name. Cropping out at the surface at irregular intervals, the wall seems formed of stones of a quadrangular, regular shape, arranged in tiers with a substance resembling cement between the layers. Pierce refused to guess whether the wall should be attributed to man or nature. He admitted,
because nature makes mortar.
That the former theory might point to the existence of a higher state of civilization among the primitive peoples inhabiting the Southwest than most anthropologists have supposed. A culture related to that attained by the Pueblos in New Mexico, or the Aztecs in Mexico, might be unearthed, he hazarded, when the army of diggers gets to burrowing. End quote.
Army of what?
Well, it's a fascinating subject. It's buried under the town of Rockwall. That.
So seeing that, how can one go sit to believe that this motherfucking wall was not man-made? Who would say that after seeing this fucking evidence? Even through video.
Takes its name from this structure.
It's natural,
when
guys.
The settlers
Really
first
natural.
moved to the area and began to try and dig water wells to get groundwater, they kept hitting some sort of rock, and now there's no natural occurring rock in that area, so they were perplexed. And once the excavations began and they began to see what they were dealing with, they began to find these masonry walls that actually were stones with buttered stones that were exactly how masons would build walls. And everyone in the town was arguing over whether or not they were going to be able to name the town after themselves. And local
Freemasons? That would mean they've been around a long motherfucking time. Or this dude just made some shit up. But if that's true, is it still in their history and they just don't want to tell us? Which would make sense. Because they want to cover it up.
Freemason who had just moved to town from Tennessee came and looked at the walls and noticed the work, noticed that it had buttressing and all of these techniques that a stonemason would use. And he told them immediately, well, none of you get to name the town after yourselves. We have to call this town Rockwall because someone was here long, long before modern humans.
He was a mason.
So the main thing of it is that people always ask me, how can I see it? Well, you can't, unfortunately. It's buried under the town of Rockwall, Texas. But that's really my main goal with all this, is to eventually have my own dig and be able to document all the things that people have seen in other digs that they have had. But the main thing about it is that it has all of these structural engineering materials built into it that are specifically designed for structural engineering, and that's how we know it's beyond shadow of a doubt not a natural formation.
It's all covered in dirt.
You have something like the element called niobium.
How deep?
And niobium is used in reinforcing pipelines, jet engines, rocket engines. And the only way you can get niobium is by extracting it from an element called columbite. Well, that process was unknown to humans until the late 1800s. So how there's niobium in these stones and absolutely no columbite is a mystery. The other thing about it is you have these elements like titanite, brookite, starlite. You have tourmaline, which is resistant to high and low frequencies that will be applied to it, and I'll tell you why that's important in just a second. But all of these materials that are made, normally when you would take these materials and mix them together, their molecular structures would just bond together. But somehow, in a process unknown to man, the individual component materials in the rock wall stones remain independent in situ in the stones. This is a process we can't even replicate with modern technology. We have no idea how this is done. And when a dig was conducted there in 1999, it was found that when a excavator was accidentally placed on top of the wall, that the low-frequency vibrations from the engine of the excavator caused the wall to shake and vibrate and produce electrical energy. So one of the functions of this wall
Do I need to even replay what he just said? Vibrations? Creating electricity? Running through the quartz? Maybe I'm just... I don't know. Haven't seen this one before, and yeah.
Seemed to be not only a structure and a seawall as well, because shark's teeth were found embedded in the wall. It also served as some sort of energy generator. It's 20 miles in diameter. It's about 80 feet down to the bedrock. It sits on limestone bedrock. And the amount of sheer weird happenings that I experienced around this area as a young person growing up, I experienced a missing time event around the area. I experienced all kinds of strange sightings, UFO sightings around the area. So when I read Jim Marr's Rule by Secrecy book and heard this mention of this rock wall, immediately, this was in 2004, and immediately the light bulbs went off and I went, that's it. I just knew instinctively, that's it. That's what I've been looking for. That's why there's been all these crazy happenings. And I've experienced such weird things around this area because there's something there, and it's in the something in the neighborhood of, I don't know, something like 400,000 years old, judged by the dating. So it's just an amazing, anomalous.
400,000 years old, and they had electricity. You sure? Is that what happened with the brick wall?
Thing, and the cover-up of it has been ongoing and continues to this day, Richard. Well, at the time in which it was constructed, we know that the inland sea, came all the way up to the location that is now Rockwall here just outside of North Texas, right outside of Dallas, where I am. And so initially, I think it was meant to both serve as a seawall.
I can't remember which one's my course.
I think it was all those things. I think it was a structure. And again, as I said, this ability for it to basically produce infinite free energy is amazing, and it uses sound to do it, and that's why you would want structure. And again, as I said, this ability for it to basically produce infinite free energy, this ability for it to basically produce infinite free energy, this ability for it to basically produce infinite free energy is amazing, and it uses sound to do it, and that's why you would want an element like tourmaline inside of the stone. Someone put that material. None of these materials are found anywhere near here in this area of North Texas at all. So you would want tourmaline in there because tourmaline can resist high-frequency sound waves without shattering. It's one of the only crystals that can do that. So whoever built this thing absolutely had a knowledge of engineering the stones get bigger the deeper that it goes down. It's built with a buttressing effect that it's intended to. It can hold live loads. So one of my estimations too, and I know this, as wild as it sounds, one of my theories about the rock wall has been that it could have been some sort of an ancient extraterrestrial launching pad, because it's built to withstand hundreds of thousands of tons of pressure on top of it. It's built and to produce energy. So it may have been something where they were actually launching crafts or ships off of this thing.
No
hundreds of
way.
thousands of years ago. It's so fascinating, Richard. It's all
You
below
don't say.
ground. The only thing that you can really see are stones that have been excavated and put on display. The rest of it
Wish
is
this
all
was
underground. And
it's coffee.
the hard part of trying to do a dig out there is trying to find a piece of property or someone that has a piece of property where we can actually conduct and do a dig at. And with property values continuing to rise and everything being built up out there, eventually, in the not-too-distant future,
Bro,
it's
I
going to be
might just go
impossible
see if
to
there's any
conduct a
property
dig
in a
there.
rock
So I'm hoping
wall.
that in the future we'll be able to
Hopefully it's not
actually
a
get some LiDAR
not a bright
scans
town.
going and see if
You know
we
what
can
I
get an underground picture, much of like what they've done in the Amazon jungle, finding ancient structures. I'm hoping that at some point we can have some LiDAR data and actually get to see a 3D underground topographical image of this thing. Absolutely. Well, he had actually gone and visited the ancient structures at Carthage, and according to him, what he saw in Carthage matched the same building style and structures of what he saw in the rock
Dude,
wall.
how the hell
And that
does
led him to
Rumble just
believe
not
that
send out
whoever these people were in the ancient
notification?
past that had built the structures at Carthage had also built the ones at the rock wall. Absolutely. And that's the thing about DeProrock. He was actually one of the first people to lead the excavations at Carthage. So he definitely had a knowledge of this. But that's when I started to think about the fact that it's possible that whoever these people were that were getting instructions to build these structures, they were getting them from a much older source and possibly from a source that had been here for a long time. That I don't know. I know that there's a lot of old-timers, and there's a lot of people that have go back to the old days of Rockwall who still kind of are in charge and run things there, and they really don't like people talking about it. They really don't like people doing excavations and stuff like that. They really just want to keep the thing kind of covered up and not talked about. But I've talked to people who live there, and they tell me all kinds of strange stories of things they've experienced, things they've seen too. And again, once you add all those events up, it just can't be a coincidence when you have so many people experiencing such high strangeness and weirdness.
The following comes to us from the Austin American Statesman of Sunday, March 22nd, 1925. Quote, UT experts to excavate. Origin of ancient structure, hidden in mists of ages. This is the first of a series of articles which will follow the work of the University of Texas scientists who are about to begin excavating an old stone quadrangle at Rockwall, Texas, in the hopes of unearthing a prehistoric civilization.
Honestly, I
Indications
kind of
that
thought that the archaeologist would dig up this guy's yard because they're going to offer money. But when they said that they don't want you to know anything, so they won't tell you anything, it just makes you wonder why. And who is they?
a civilization antedating our own lived in this country thousands of years ago have been found all over North America. Archaeologists and anthropologists now believe they have reached the key position for unearthing these ancient splendors in the United States. Follow the progress of these official excavators, whose authoritative reports will be published from time to time in the American Statesman. The great stone wall which runs under the little town of Rockwall, Texas, is about to lose its age-old secret to science.
Fuck yeah.
Since its discovery in 1852,
Real science.
This subterranean barrier, built in perfect bricklayer fashion, has been a mystery. Cursory examination by archaeologists has raised a question of whether the wall was made by man or nature. If erected by man, presence of the wall under the black lands
that looks
of
like
Texas
nature.
means that at one time this part of the country was inhabited by a civilization possibly older than ancient Rome. If it is a freak,
Texas fits into where I personally think Atlantis is or was. That doesn't help. I mean, it helped me.
It means the stone fence was made during the course of one of the Earth's violent upheavals. In any case, the formation antedates American civilization. For over half a century, this enigma of Texas has ruined the plowshares and dispositions of Rockwall farmers. Now it is to be excavated to determine by science whether the wall means a prehistoric civilization in the United States or a natural geological dike. The University of Texas is sending 2 of its best.
Did he say a natural dike? What do the lesbians have to do with this shit? I'm just kidding. I know what he means. I still looking at this. How the fuck is it natural? I mean, am I seeing it through a different, what are those things called when you filter? Are my eyes just fucked up? I mean, I did have surgery on them. Does nobody else see it? Because now I'm starting to feel crazy, which I like.
Known experts. The University of Texas is sending 2 of its best known experts in archaeology and anthropology, Dr. Leroy Patton and J.E. Pierce, to head an expedition to unearth the wall. Colonel Frank P. Holland, publisher of Farm and Ranch and Holland's Magazine, has agreed to bear all expenses of the party during the excavation. A short time ago, representatives of the Rockwall Chamber of Commerce secured the last signature of Rockwall landowners on contracts, giving the university scientists full rights to uncover the formation in any part of the town during the digging. A part of the wall is reported to run directly under the little stone courthouse, which stands in a cement square in the center of town. The wall is built up in perfect tiers with varicolored rocks. The top layer is about 18 inches across, with stones the size of artificial cement blocks. At 40 feet below the earth, the rocks are said to weigh about 1 ton each. Between the rocks, which are of a sandstone body,
40 feet
is a substance of the appearance of a disintegrated mortar.
As far as
if we pause here, I would like to remind you that the mortar which he is referring to clearly contains bits of quartz crystal and iron. We resume. Outcroppings of...
Why would it be buried 40 feet?
The stone barrier over an area of 4 miles indicate that the wall forms a complete quadrangle. On what would be the outside of the wall, the stones are smooth. On the inside, they are rough. Surveyors have traced the rock line and have prepared maps for the guidance of the scientists who will direct the explorations. Count Byron Kuhn de Prorock, who was one of the principals in the excavations of Carthage, visited Rockwall recently and expressed the belief that the old wall here held some connection with a prehistoric civilization. My brief examination of this formation indicates the wall is built very similar to the walls we unearthed in Carthage, he declared, before a scientific body in Dallas. The Count said that he planned to return here in 1926 and conduct an expedition to excavate the wall. It is not known whether he plans to offer his assistance to the University of Texas scientists who have taken over the work. And still another angle. One farmer showed investigators records proving he had at one time shipped some of the rock found near the wall to be assayed. The report said the rock assayed at $17.10 a ton for gold. Little attention has been given to these reports, however. Dr. Patton declared, "Science cannot understand why Europe and Northern Africa should have all the cream of the archaeological splendors. The Chinese have been traced back thousands of years. It is known that they wandered in many parts of the earth. It is quite possible,
for 2 days?
according to scientists, that a branch of the race drifted through this country and settled in
Wouldn't
what
really
is
cost
now
that much to stay at a
Texas."
hotel there at all.
End quote. In 1927, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, both L.W. Stevenson and J.W. Fuchs of the infamous Smithsonian Institute pronounced the structure as a natural formation. In 1933, a map was prepared by Martin Kelsey and Harold Denton with the aid of J.S. Mason, Rockwall County surveyor, of all the discovered outcroppings of the wall. At the time, there were 11 known outcroppings. In 1936, coinciding with the Texas Centennial, a section of the wall was excavated and opened for viewers for a small admittance fee. The attraction was owned by R.F. Canup. In the first few months, the attraction averaged 70 visitors per day. In 1949, a layman, Mr. Sanders of Fort Worth, conducted an excavation on property near what is now FM 549 and Cornelius Road. The rocks in this excavation averaged 12 to 14 inches thick. In 1950, Dr. James L. Glenn published his photographic essay on the system of rock walls at Rockwall, Texas.
You can't tell me that's
Among his observations, Glenn states, "The fact that there is a natural fault here does not preclude the construction of other walls by a prehistoric race within the same region." The following comes to us from Bob Lewis with Planet Rockwell in regards to a strange artifact found at Rockwall. Quote, "In a recent presentation by the Rockwall Historical Society, Sherry Stodghill Fowler presented a stone figure to the audience. The interesting object was found in one of the excavations along the rock wall. Various studies of this rock figure determined that it was A. the fossilized snout of a prehistoric winged dinosaur, B. a carved serpent's head made by an artisan from a pre-Columbian civilization, probably the one that built the wall, or C. a rock. The mystery lives on." In 1996, architect John Lindsay conducts a study of the rock wall. After examining excavations, he concludes, quote, "After compiling past records, data, and documents, including recent studies and research, evidence of a prehistoric structure built by man is mounting." End quote. There are many who have theorized, with great evidence at their disposal, that the rock wall of Texas was the handiwork of a race of giants which once inhabited the Americas.
Damn
On
you,
July 11th,
Tartarians.
1919, the Coconino Sun reported the following in regards to a remarkable discovery not far from Rockwall. Quote, "A giant skeleton, 18 feet tall." If the report that the fossilized skeleton of a giant 18 feet tall has been found near Seymour, Texas is true, it is the most important ethnological discovery ever made in the world, remarked Dr. J.E. Pierce, professor of anthropology of the University of Texas. It would break all previous records of giants by nearly 10 feet, as the tallest man known to anthropological research was only 8 feet 5 inches in height. The skeleton is in possession of W.J. McKay.
Yeah, but that could be just what they're allowed to tell you. Because they remember some of the stuff they're not supposed to say.
Kinney at Houston,
The
Texas,
history is written by
an
the
oil
Victor story.
prospector who found it and has been seen by a number of people who vouch for the truth of the size of the relic of a heretofore unknown race Mr. McKinney, while making an excavation on the narrow watershed between the Brazos and Wichita rivers, came upon the fossilized skeleton near the surface. Mr. McKinney writes, "I estimate that this man weighed from 2,000 to 2,500 pounds. According to my deductions,
Christ.
he lived about 2,800 years ago. The skull is 6 times the size of that."
And that was the thing, like, they believed, like I said, time was irrelevant. Still is. But the way they lived for so fucking long. And then nobody knows why. All of a sudden, their lifespan just kept dropping. Maybe that was mixed breeding between the civilizations. Because you had the savages and you had the ones they're showing you that are more well advanced. And then, dumbing down per generation. Maybe that's why they say, how do I say this? I really don't know how to say it now. But fuck. I can't think. I can see it in my head, but I can't put it in words.
Mr. McKinney does not explain how he arrived at the figures as to the probable period of the existence of this remarkable man. It is probable that the bones of the giant will be donated to the Smithsonian Institution, which, under the
Smithsonian levels, multiple levels underground that you will never see, stored with stuff you will never see, you will never supposed to know about. What a perfect fucking place, right?
The direction of Dr. J. Walter Fuchs, is now conducting anthropological research work in Texas. End quote. The following was printed in the Rockwall Success, Rockwall's first newspaper, on May 28, 1886. Quote, "The greatest wonders that we have to record this week is the finding of a petrified human skull. While at work last Saturday, Ben Burton unearthed with his plow a gigantic skull, fully as large as a half bushel. The staring sockets wherein the eyeballs once rolled were as large as a half-gallon cup. Some few of the jaw teeth still remained, one of them about an inch thick
It's
by
funny
2
to look
inches
at that.
long.
Think of that.
This goes to prove..."
Thinking of fucking Indiana Jones. Sometimes Hollywood is more realistic than you know. Even though they're a bunch of fucking pedophiles. Blood. Oh, I don't know when I say that part. Fear of children, harnessing it.
That this country was once inhabited by a race of people that would be wonderful to look at now. Dr. Wiggins thinks it the skull of some antediluvian giant that would have weighed at least 1,000 pounds. Anyone
they're saying
wishing
these
to see
giants
this
were
mammoth
only 7-8 feet tall, and they weighed 1,000 pounds. Holy fuck! They must have been thick.
skull can do so by calling at the Success office, as Mr. Burton says he will leave it there for inspection.
That would be about the right size.
On June 4th, 1886, the Rockwall Success reported that after J.B. Burton had discovered the gigantic petrified skull, a large crowd began digging around in hopes of finding something interesting. A certain W.R. Greer is said to have accidentally breached a previously buried chamber along a portion of the Great Rock Wall. The cavity proved to be a chamber about 60 by 100 feet square, and 40 feet from the floor to the slate roof, through which they had effected an entrance.
Oh.
This roof was supported on pillars of black marble, whose polished sides glittered in the lamplight, and made one think
Pillars are
of the
man-made,
Orient.
smooth.
This underground palace will undoubtedly astonish the world when thoroughly
Palace?
explored. In one corner stands a large iron chest, supposed to be full of gold or valuables, which was so heavy as to baffle all efforts to remove it. An expedition team
You know,
is said
now that
to
I'm
have
grown up,
discovered a bed.
when I lived in Kentucky way in the early 90s, my family took me to Mammoth Cave. As a kid, you know, I never thought anything but like maybe I could see Native Americans living in there. I want to go back. I want to look at the structures now, how it's held up, because now I'm really fucking curious. Wish I thought about this when I was a kid. Like I said, I fucking sound like Kamala Harris repeating the same shit. But fuck, man, I must have missed a lot.
Of 25 feet in length, a pair of sandals 3 feet long by 10 inches wide, and a battle axe with a pole handle 12 feet long, which weighed at least 75 pounds, all matching the titanic stature of the skeletal remains found from these areas. Thomas Chandler Halliburton, a local judge, believed that the rock wall was built by prehistoric Goliath to enclose his vast estate. Dr. Wiggins, Greer, Stager, and Handley are said to have discovered a huge iron kettle estimated to hold over 1,000 gallons, and against it leaned a fork as large as a hay fork. Inside the giant cauldron, they found ample evidence of brutalized human corpses, leading them to conclude that the giant Goliath was indeed a cannibal. Similar wall formations have been discovered elsewhere in America, but most notably in the American South, tracing the Gulf Coast, as can be seen in an article published by the Black Hills Union on the 26th of April, 1901. Quote, "Great buried wall causes a big stir.
You too, Joni. Thank you for being here.
Evidence of a high civilization among prehistoric Mississippians is found. May be the cradle of mankind. Excavations that may upset all previous theories as to the race's early home is now used as a quarry, a startling discovery." End quote. Some have theorized that a network of great megalithic
that 90
walls
degree angle
once
for?
traced the
See at the bottom
entire
left?
North American continent, much like the Great Wall
Yeah,
of
that
China.
looks, that's natural. It's natural. The fuck out.
There was a report that I'd received from some people who had a cave on their property not far from the rock wall, and they told me that if you try to take cameras or cell phones or anything, or any kind of batteries near this thing, they immediately drain, and it basically zaps any electronics that go near it. So again, there's no way to tell whether
Limestone?
this has something directly to do with the rock wall, but I tend to think that it being in such close proximity to it, that there absolutely has to be something to that. But again, there's always been a lot of weirdness and high strangeness around this area, and it also lies directly on the 33rd degree parallel, which is also
Oh, you dumb
where
motherfucker.
Roswell sits on top of as well. So there's all kinds of weirdness and strangeness surrounding this thing, and the fact that it's aligned to the equinoxes and the solstices, just as a lot of the other ancient sites like the Serpent Mound in Ohio are, we start to see that there's something very, very technologically advanced about this thing. And again, high weirdness abounds at all levels.
Heading back
This
south
Serpent
towards
Mountain, right?
Florida, the last stop on our journey was the ancient Caddo Mounds. Caddo Mounds State Historic Site is an archaeological site in Weeping Mary, Texas. This Caddoan Mississippian culture site is comprised of a village and ceremonial center that features 2 earthwork platform mounds and 1 burial mound. Located on a pre-contact Native American trail, later named by the Spanish as El Camino Real de los Tejas, which ran from the east coast in Florida to the west coast in California. The settlement developed hundreds of years before the arrival of Europeans to the region. Archaeologists believe the site was created in approximately 800 AD, with most major construction taking place between
800. 800. Then what happened next? It went to the 1800s.
and 1300 AD. The site likely began with the founding of a permanent village by the Hafa Adai, who moved into the region from the Red River area to the northeast in roughly 850 to 900 AD.
So they fell into
the region
construction.
had ideal qualities for a village: good soil, abundant food resources, and a permanent water source that flowed into the Netchez River. What eventually became the largest mound, Mound A, was begun at this time. It is at the southern edge of the site and was surrounded by about 40 houses. In 1100, a new mound was begun near the center of the site, Mound B, and would eventually measure roughly 175 feet north-south and 115 feet east-west, and would eventually measure roughly 175 feet north-south and 115 feet east-west.
How deep?
Mound C, the northernmost mound of the three, was used as a burial mound, not for elite residences or temples like the other two. The site was the southwesternmost ceremonial mound center of all the great mound-building cultures of North America. The settlement was abandoned when the local Caddo ritually capped the mounds around 1250 AD and focused their activities from the east to west, according to their oral history. The outlying hamlets became more self-sufficient and grew less dependent on the site for religious and political matters. The Caddo culture that remained was similar to the earlier culture in many ways, but was more egalitarian and did not import as many exotic goods. In regards to religion, we were told by a worker that the mounds were indeed constructed according to astrological alignment, as are the majority of ancient ceremonial sites around the world.
Great Pyramid.
New structures on top. I think they were adding new soil to both of these mounds about every years or so.
Why would they be adding new
Not
soil?
necessarily, don't know exactly what was causing that. Halley's Comet makes it's an 87-year cycle.
Wow.
So something in the heavens might have triggered them to say it's time to add new soil, tear down the houses, put new soil on, and then build new houses. This low ceremonial mound has had, at least in the small section they excavated, had no burials and no evidence of buildings on top of it. And so burials, no buildings, buildings, no burials, no buildings, no burials. So
that's interesting.
Whatever they were doing on that low ceremonial mound was just from the top.
So one of the mounds was built.
Aerial map, the two larger mounds line up on true north. The true north marker would be parallel. So they might have lined up on the North Star to get that alignment.
I don't know if I'm going to say it, but the way the stars in that picture are moving, it would make sense.
That mound is not in that alignment. It's actually outside of that line. So it makes a plaza in the middle. And so they may have been, Chief could have been up there saying, let the games begin, and they start playing stickball or chunky or something. Could have had dances on this side of the mound.
Sure.
That mound for sure, and the temple mound would have been flat in their heyday. They look more like a mountain now with kind of a crest, but they would have been flat-topped mounds when they were in use.
Right.
I think the burial mound also was flat-topped, but I'm not an archaeologist. And most archaeologists today believe it was always a cone-shaped mound. But if you look at the archaeological book or a reference when they dug into that mound, you see the sides. They use different dirt each time they added a layer. And the sides of the mound go like this, and then a layer of dirt that's flat, and then the next layer goes up, and then it's flat.
Right.
So to me, that implies it was flat-topped mound until it started to erode a little bit over the years. Have I ever seen a ghost or anything? No, never have. I've never felt uncomfortable here, and I've been out here at night doing things. So I've never seen lights. I've never seen glowing globes.
Is that what a lot of people ask about? Or
they do, and not a lot, but there are some like ghost hunters, around. They'll come out and ask if we've seen things like that, but I have never seen that. Now, I've never been very sensitive to those things, but my wife is, and the only place she ever feels uncomfortable is the barrow pit. It's on the other side of that low ceremonial mound is where a hole in the ground, and it's where they dug some of the dirt to make that mound. And when I first got here 10, 11 years ago, the first time she went over there, she said, I don't want to go any further. I don't like this place. Something happened here. And so I said, okay, I knew enough in the past. We've been married 40 years. So I said, okay, we won't go any further. And then come to find out a couple of months later, when they were excavating these mounds, this side of the property, in summers of 68, 69, and 70. They did excavate some of that barrow pit, and they found one burial in it face down with no grave goods around it, which usually was a sign that they
just died.
They were not buried in the normal manner.
Right.
So they had probably done something they shouldn't have, and might have been killed because of it, and was buried in what could have been the rubbish tip face down. So that panned out for my wife. We understood why.
So that's the only.
There's another place on the back side of if you got to go over to the El Camino area, we have about 2 miles of walking trails over there. And the first trail we put in does have an old barn, and she doesn't like that area either for some reason.
Okay.
She'll go over there, but I know she just not comfortable. So nothing about me as far as not feeling, okay about the place, but she definitely has picked up a couple. So, you enjoy your side. There, like I said, there's narrative panels like this one all around this trail, and it's about 6/10 of a mile, just a little over half a mile long. There you go.
Thank you. The DeSoto expedition of 1539 briefly passed through Caddo territory. Certain tribes within the Caddo area were said to have been particularly monstrous in appearance, as they deformed their faces and had extremely elongated skulls. The Tula people, for example, were said to have had heads a full yard in length. Let us now read from La Florida del Inca by Garcilaso de la Vega,
and that's kind of like
Chronicle
the same
of the
people
DeSoto expedition, first published in 1605.
They want some aliens to look like with those elongated heads. Think about the movie Aliens. Look at Martians. They have that big head, the fat head. There's a couple of other ones. Cone heads.
5. The use of the word Inca comes from the fact that DeSoto had previously triumphed over the Inca in his South American conquests, and thus Inca soldiers had been enlisted into his ranks for his subsequent expedition of La Florida. So too was the author of that account, an Inca chronicler, making it a more impartial source than a Spanish account. The following
Look
comes
at
to
that
us
dude's
in
fucking
regard
head.
to the Tula people of the Caddo area. Quote, "Moreover, the neighbors of the Tula said that the deforming of their heads, some of which were more than a yard in length, and the painting of their faces and their lips, both inside and out, were done to make themselves uglier than they naturally were, so that the hideousness of their countenances might match the evil of their souls and the fierceness of their character. For in every respect they were most inhuman." End quote. It is worth noting that the Spanish
How were
yard
they inhuman?
is only 32 inches rather than 36, but this would still be a skull longer than any yet found among the
Crossbreeding.
Paracas culture of Peru or elsewhere. Elongated skulls abound in the remains of Caddo or Tula people, but none quite as long as reported here have been found. Not yet, at least. Or they have been covered up. The Caddo were an important group of closely cognate and usually allied tribes, formerly holding a considerable territory in West Louisiana and eastern Texas. In the earlier period, they were commonly known to the Spanish as Tejas, hence we get the name of the state, and to the French as Cenis or Asenais. The Caddo were a semi-sedentary and agricultural people, living in large, conical, communal, grass-thatched houses, and cultivating abundant crops of corn, beans, and pumpkins. Their men were brave, but not aggressive, while their women were expert potters and mat weavers. In general culture, they were on a plane with the Choctaw, Creeks, and other tribes of the Gulf states, and far superior to the moving tribes of the plains, or the fish-eaters of the Texas coast. They had a fully developed clan system with 10 clans, in which descent followed the female line. All but one of these, the Sun clan, were named from animals, and no Caddo would dare to kill the animal from which his clan derived its name.
No shit.
The eagle was also held sacred, and might be killed for its feathers, only by the regularly appointed priest, and after certain propitiatory ceremonies. Their religion savored of the bloody rites of the Natchez and Aztecs, including cannibalism. A French officer by the name of La Harpe describes one of these savage ceremonies, which he witnessed while sojourning in their villages in 1712. A large war party had arrived from an expedition against a western tribe, bringing with them 2 prisoners, all that remained of 6 unfortunates, the others having been eaten on the way. The prisoners were closely guarded in the open air, as according to tribal custom, a captive who had once entered a Caddo house was thenceforth free and safe from harm. 2 frames were quickly prepared by planting 2 pairs of stout uprights in the earth,
So
about
what
4
if
feet apart.
you just happen to get away and you know the customs and you hide in a building? Jump inside a random building. Then be like, yeah, motherfuckers. Let me out. Give me some clothes.
With cross pieces about 1 foot and 9 feet from the ground. To these frames the doomed men were then fastened, with their outstretched arms bound to the cross pieces above their heads, and with their whole weight hanging upon the cords. After hanging thus for about a half an hour, facing the rising sun, they were taken down and compelled to dance for their persecutors. At evening, having been all day without food, they were again tied up in the same way,
So can you
facing
twerk?
the setting sun. The next morning, they were again suspended from the frames, this time with their faces looking for the last time upon the rising sun, with the whole tribe gathered around for the final
that's
tragedy.
fucking crazy.
Fires were lighted by each family, and large earthen pots filled with water were placed over the
And
blaze.
at dawn, too.
2 old men, each bearing in one hand a knife, and in the other an earthen bowl, then advanced upon the helpless victims, and stabbed them repeatedly, until the blood gushed out in streams, and was caught in the bowls held below. This was then poured into a pot, and cooked until clotted, when it was eaten by the priests. The bodies were then dismembered, and a portion given to each family, by whom it was at once cooked and eaten. The cannibal orgy concluded with a dance. Such was the savagery which the missionaries challenged. Cabeza de Vaca may have met some of the Caddo in his aimless wanderings in Texas before 1536. After seeing the Caddo mounds, we made our way back to Florida
Big-ass
and
tornado.
made some great stops along the way, so make sure to stay tuned for more content. And in conclusion, with this documentary, let the bond between Florida and Texas, America's 2 great remaining bastions.
That was a good history lesson. Whether or not you agree with some of the things, I do not believe, and I will never believe, that that's fucking natural. No fucking way. And they're stupid enough to people think other people will. I mean, if you believe that it is, I'm not saying you're stupid, but at the same time, I might be saying you're stupid. But with that said, hope you enjoyed, like I said, the history lesson, whether it be history that you know or just learned. But I'm not telling you how to think. I showed you what I actually kind of blind reacted to. That's why I had a lot of like, wait a second, I've been saying it. Holy shit. I'm just telling you how to think. Hope y'all have the good rest of your day. Let the other drama panels commence. Not what I wanted to do. Also not what I wanted to do.